Hi, this is Shawnee Maurice from Hihu, where we take a look at landmark games from the past and see how they hold up to current industry trends and standards. Today we look at Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, back from 2003. A third-person slasher and also first-person shooter game set in the role of an up-and-coming Jedi trainee. So when compared to modern mechanics, level design and story, how does it hold up nearly 13 years on? I'm gonna have to say pretty well, and that is if you're a fan of Star Wars. Luckily I love the franchise and I enjoyed the game a lot. However, there are a few mechanics that have since been phased out and replaced by other mechanics as the years have gone by, and this game really shows why, but we'll go into that later. Starting off, you are placed in a character creation screen giving you a few options between races and appearances. You are then introduced to a newly created protagonist named Jaden Core, a new recruit for Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy. From the first mission, you are given a lightsaber and are introduced to the core mechanics of the game. The gameplay is fairly simple at its core. You have your guns and explosives which place you in a first-person view, and then you have your third-person lightsaber view. You can use your powers in both views. I really liked that the game gave me options to play in both. However, I found myself using my lightsaber more than anything else. Your powers are keybound to the function buttons and your weapons are keybound to the numeric buttons. However, this is where I think one of the flaws has come to age. We take this mechanic for granted in 2016, but casting menus wasn't exactly a commonly used mechanic in real-time fighting games back then. Whereas we have seen it more in strategy games, what Jedi Academy needed was the act of slowing down time or pausing time completely to allow the player to select the power that they needed and unpause time to cast it. We see it in many games today. Mass Effect is one of those games that manages to implement it really well. BioWare, the company that made Mass Effect, also made another Star Wars game called Knights of the Old Republic, also released in 2003, which did have a casting wheel, but that was a turn-based role-playing game. At the start of every mission, you are given the ability to select or upgrade new powers, and after a few missions early on, you could very well have a large amount of force abilities at your disposal, and this is where it becomes hard to manage. The game gives you a sliding menu and you can use it in real time, but it becomes very tedious to use. It's also rather difficult to press any of the far function buttons, especially when you're in the midst of running up to walls, jumping and attacking with your lightsaber whilst juggling 2 or 3 enemies. You really have to have 3 hands to properly use your powers in this game, which is a shame because they're all so fun to use. I found myself using push, pull and lightning as my go-tos and ignored everything else, which isn't exactly a bad thing by the way. I'm just trying to say that the game is lacking a mechanic which we are so used to in games today, and I really wish it was in there. You manage your missions on a galaxy map very similar to the map you use in Mass Effect, usually given around 5 missions before you have to complete a big mission on that level. This final mission of each segment is the main story component. These final missions were always the most enjoyable as things were actually happening as opposed to doing tasks. Now, the level variety here is pretty wide, and this is a good and bad thing in terms of the game's quality. However, sometimes missions felt like they were filler, sometimes missions were added in just for fan service, and some of them were horribly constructed. Most of the time you'll land on a planet, kill some thugs or disarm some bombs, and you're done. But on the occasion they would mix it up and it would go horribly wrong. There was one notable mission that really grinded my gears. So up until this point, you haven't been really given any vehicles, and starting this mission, you're given a speeder, and I can tell you, this was the only mission that had the speeder, and it never really existed in anything else, but the controls are so fucking horrible. Up until this point, I have been spending the game cutting down dudes with my lightsaber. The whole game is based around these lightsaber fights with FPS added elements, but for this one mission, which goes for around 10-20 minutes depending on how hard you find it to drive, you never see it again. So the devs spent really no time on this driving mechanic, and it clearly shows. Like, if you look at the footage, you can see how fucking bad this is. It should not have existed in the game, and it was a waste of my time. Now, in other circumstances, you can tell that the developers realized that the game was becoming too repetitive, which is a good thing, by the way. It allows the developer to go back and make changes, but if you're gonna do it, make sure you think about it first. There's one mission where it is raining down acid, and being out in the open makes you exposed and you receive damage. Kind of like Hellstrom in Mass Effect 2, when you're outside and you're exposed to sunlight and it inflicts damage. But due to lack of sound design or the thought of this level with the rain, your character moans the same soundbite over and over again as you find cover. This made something fun and moderately intense while scrambling for cover really annoying. Just have a listen to this. Now, one thing I found rather game-breaking was the enemy AI, and there's a few things worth noting. I could be in a room filled with stormtroopers and standing still, not even touching my keyboard or mouse. Sometimes they would put themselves directly in front of me, shooting, and then to be killed by their own bullet being deflected by my lightsaber. Sometimes I would be in a fight with some Sith and jump to another platform. The AI would be so dumb they would kill themselves in the process of jumping to the ledge that I am on. I realized that jumping was a more effective way to kill my enemies rather than fighting them. Taking jumping into account too, often I found this game wasn't made for platforming and the platformy levels were really painful to play. In order to move forward whilst jumping, you actually have to press jump and then press forward. Not press forward and jump at the same time like you would with every other fucking platformer in existence. I'd often find myself trying to jump to a higher platform, press jump and forward, and end up doing a backflip and falling into an abyss. Now, all of these gripes aside, they're all really minor, and it just shows the game's age. I'm not saying that this is a bad game at all. This is a really fun game, and these are just minor roadblocks in what is a really fun experience. Now, the story itself is shy of being anything fantastic, but it's still a bit of fun. I really didn't feel anything towards the characters, but I love throwing my lightsaber into people's faces, killing 2 or 3 dudes in one move. Whilst the combat is clunky in comparison to modern Star Wars games like The Force Unleashed, it's still a really fun journey for those who love Star Wars. The game costs nearly 10 Imperial credits, and goes on sale so often it's not funny. Now, I'd recommend you buy this game whilst on discount, or alternatively, see if you can grab the Star Wars bundle. If you are more interested in a tactical approach, please do try the Knights of the Old Republic. That game is fantastic. But if you want a modern version of Jedi Academy, try The Force Unleashed. But please give this game a go, it's a lot of fun. And if you aren't into Star Wars, try Mass Effect. That game is the fucking bee's knees. If you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, hit the subscribe and like button. And now in the comments below, please leave your thoughts, both past and present, on Jedi Academy. And tell me what you also think about the casting wheel, and which games where it works best. This is Shawnee Maurice from Hihu. Thanks for watching.